Good morning, everyone. My name is Sawyer, and the reason why I have this lovely boot is because I have a stress fracture in my leg, in case anyone was wondering. And I just currently got my associate's degree in computer science at SVCC, and I'm continuing there for mechanical engineering. My mentors are Zhejian and Zeifeng, they're sitting back there, and we work in the Vision Research Lab under Professor Manjana. And this summer, my project was evaluating context-aware saliency detection by studying how humans look at still images. So what is visual saliency anyhow? It's what makes certain parts of an image stand out more than others. So basically, it's what people find important in an image. And it's important to study visual saliency because it's a way so that a computer would be able to mimic human perception. So you can see here, this is an original image, and this is a human fixation map. So this is where people were looking at. The red areas are the areas where people are looking at the most, and the green areas, this is for a shorter duration of time. And then this is from one of the articles I read, a saliency map a computer generated. So this is what a computer would think that a person would think is the most important. So to be able to better have a computer analyze what a person would look at, we have to analyze human gaze patterns. And I've been doing that by using the iLink 1000. This is the setup I have in the lab. This is me. And this is the camera right here, and then this is our beautiful monitor that we have our pictures displayed on. And our camera, this is a little close-up of it. There's the camera right here. It's an infrared high-speed camera. And then there's an illuminator right here so that the camera would be able to pick up the eyes. And potential applications after figuring out human gaze patterns are image segmentation. This is an example right here. So it's like a computer would be able to figure out the different portions of the picture, like the foreground from the background. In this case, the palm tree from the sand, from the ocean, from the sky. Image retargeting, which is like an automated cropping system that a computer would just be able to crop out. Here you'll see an anemone that is there that doesn't give much information about the picture, so it would just crop it out itself. And also for image search and retrieval, which is for like Google image search and stuff like that. So for traditional visual saliency methods, the problem is it mostly focuses only on the dominant object, which for sometimes it really isn't much of a problem. But other times, just looking at the dominant object isn't enough. Like in this picture here, can anyone tell me what's going on in this image? Can't really tell if it's turned or what's going on by just this guy laying there. So seeing the context of an image makes a big difference, especially in this case. So that's where context-aware visual saliency comes into handy. It takes not only the dominant object, but also the areas around the dominant object that would make the scene make sense. So in this article I read, written by Gofferman, they proposed an algorithm for this context-aware visual saliency, and they used the 4 principles of human visual attention. So the first is low-level considerations, which is like the different colors and textures. So like yellow text and a blue background would stand out. And then global considerations is it finds repeating patterns, so it would be able to eliminate like the background, like the grassy field, you wouldn't need to see the entire grass. And then for visual organization rules is how it connects everything together. So the grass is with the other grass, and then it would just be able to figure out what the objects are. And then high-level factors are like human faces, because people always, one of the first things people look at in a picture is the face to see if they can recognize anyone, and also text, if there's any text in the picture. So what I've been doing is because it's a new area, there's not any human evaluation, so I've been using my eye tracker to try to see if what people look at to figure out an image is the same thing as what this computer algorithm is doing. So at first I had a preliminary experiment to figure out what the length of time that people need to look at the picture would be, and then also to see what different categories of images to look at. So for first, this is an image that was shown for 2 seconds. The person looked at the car and the fire. They were able to say, oh, there was a car driving next to a fire. But then when the image is shown for 5 seconds, they had a better analysis of what was going on in the image. Like, instead of just saying a car, they were able to say it was a silver SUV, and then there were also trees in the background that were burning. And then for different categories, for example here, for sports, there's a set pattern that people look at images. For the sports categories, they would always look at the person or the people who were playing the sport. And then also, right here, the equipment that they were using to figure out what sport it was that they were playing. And here's also another example showing that there's multiple people, so they look at all three of these people who are running towards the soccer ball. So that's what they find all important at this general area. They would be able to figure out what's going on. Okay, so from my preliminary experiment, I found that we need to give the people a task to look at, or else they just look aimlessly, just kind of search around, glaze the picture, and they don't really know what's going on, or they just kind of get bored and tired and just stare at the middle of the image, so they still don't know what's going on. And then also another thing is that prior knowledge has a big effect. Like here, the person who was looking at this image was Chinese, so after looking at the face and the clothing, which is the normal pattern, they got distracted and started trying to read the characters in the background. And another thing we found that 2 seconds was a little too short to be able to figure out what was going on, but 5 seconds was too long and people would get distracted, so we decided that we were going to do 4 seconds for our experiment. So for my experiment, I had a set of 60 images that were shown for 4 seconds each, and I had 17 participants who came. And we used different categories such as outdoor images, indoor images, and then sports, and then like nature and animal scenes. The task that we gave them was to look at the parts of the image that best describe the scene and then describe the scene over to me, so that they would be paying attention to the picture and actually be able to tell us what was going on. And then our goal is to see if the data that we find from them looking at the image would match the data that we get from the algorithm. So I found that the results came in 4 categories, where the algorithm matched almost perfectly the human attention, where the algorithm matched part of the picture, and then also where it just didn't match human perception at all. So for where the algorithm matched human perception, it usually happens when the background is pretty plain, and then the foreground is pretty distinct from the background. Like you can see here, this is the picture of the weightlifter again. And then this is the ContextAware algorithm, where it finds the weightlifter, where it says Beijing Olympics, the Olympic symbol, and the weight important. So these are the results I got. These are from 4 people that I saw. And you can see that everyone looks in pretty much the same areas. The face, the body, and then like the words and the weights. So just to show you, this is the result from the algorithm. And then here I compiled all of them and overlaid all my results. There's 10 results that I actually overlaid here. And you can see that it's pretty much the same thing here. And then here's another example of an image with a pretty plain background. And you can see that everyone here looks at like the boogie or the inner tube and also the person falling off of the inner tube. And that is also what the algorithm found most important, so that works as well. There's also times when the algorithm only finds part of the image important that people do. And that usually happens when the dominant object it's like a plain color, or it just kind of meshes in with the background. And also people have a tendency to look at faces, so animal faces was a hard thing for the algorithm to find important as well. And you can see here that if the algorithm finds this red ball very important, because the red on the background of green is very contrasting. But dog is pretty plain, it's this light color, so it kind of just ignores it. You can kind of see a little outline, but it finds the trees in the background more important. However, when people look at this, they find the red important just because they're like, what is this red thing? It's like an air freshener hanging from the rearview mirror. And then also, they look at the dog's face to see. And that's the most part that everyone looks at. So instead of just finding this red thing important, people find the red and also the dog important. Another time that this happens is when one of the dominant images, like this lamp right here, is almost the same color as the background. So you can see it just doesn't really show right here that there's a lamp or any kind of object there. However, people see that there's a lamp, and they look at the ball as well, which is shown, which can be also seen in the algorithm. but they also look at the lamp. And when the algorithm is completely different from human perception is usually when the picture is very busy, or if you can't really see, if the dominant object is not very obvious. So here, it's a pretty busy image. There's a lot going on, so the algorithm sees it and it's like, oh, everything is important, so it's basically just highlighting everything here. However, people, again, are looking at mostly the faces of the people and the heads, and then also where the action is taking place. So it's looking at like the hands where you can see that the ball is being thrown to. And you can also see that some people like over here are looking at the numbers. So when the algorithm found everything important, people only found certain areas important. And here's another example. There's an owl that's camouflaged right here. It's pretty hard to see. It's an actual picture. People were thinking I photoshopped it in or something, but it's not. This is an actual picture of an owl just sitting in front of a tree. There's no way for the algorithm to be able to figure this out. It's even hard for the human eye to see. So it just completely ignored that, just thinks it's a tree. And then it just says, oh, the leaves in the tree are important. However, when people see it, they first notice the face of the owl, and then they kind of look down the body, and they're like, oh, that's an owl. They don't think, oh, there's just a face in the tree. They realize that it's a whole object, and they see it as an owl. So, in conclusion, I found that there are 3 different categories where my results ended up. And there was when the algorithm matches human perception, that's usually when there's a plain background, and then when there's a partial match to human perception, which happens where the foreground is sometimes plain and it has a busier background, and then also when it doesn't match human perception at all. And that's usually when the foreground, the dominant object, is not very obvious, or there's a very busy image. And some other things for future works that we'd like to look at is how the blurring of an image or adding the noise to an image, how that affects how people look at images, and also how the algorithm sees the image. And then also another thing that we would like to look at is how people's prior knowledge would affect, like people with different knowledge of languages, if they're male, female, their age, that kind of thing. So we think that that would also be really interesting to see how that would affect how people look at images. And these are just the references for all of the articles that I read. And I would just like to thank everyone who's here, and then also everyone from INSET, Jens, Nick, Erica, everyone, thanks so much. And my advisor, Professor Manjana, and my mentors, Zhuzhen and Zeifeng, and everyone from the Vision Research Lab, like Carlos back there and Carter. Thanks so much, you guys. It was a lot of help. And just everyone who volunteered for my experiment. I could have definitely not have done this without you guys. And just all my family, friends, teachers, everyone who's just supported me. Thanks so much.